When I was 17 years old, I would wander the streets at night completely alone. I felt hazy, tired, numb and depressed most of my waking hours. At school, I felt incredibly socially anxious to speak to most people, most of all girls, and I felt more isolated from everyone I spoke to with each passing day. So as the nights passed from summer into autumn then winter, I retreated more into myself as I tried to piece together why I felt so emotionally numb and sad most of the time. And at that time I began reading and getting into self-development, which only further isolated me from all of my friends who I grew up with. Friends who I loved being around and they loved being around me, but friends who all of these self-help books were telling me I shouldn't be hanging around with anymore because they weren't ambitious and they didn't have direction in their life. So I spent most weekends alone, and I remember I would fear the school holidays coming around where we would be off school for a week or a few weeks at a time, because that meant that I would have the whole house to myself, which is weird because you'd think that would be a teenage boy's dream, right? But it was in those moments I'd feel most alone, because it meant all of my other family members were out at work. So this continued until I reached my lowest point. One day, after I spent the night before crying my eyes out to one of my best friends on the phone, I woke up to the sound of my alarm. Again, I felt heavy, weak and depressed as I started to get ready to go to school. I remember the weather was freezing cold because it was winter, and I was wearing a checkered shirt. My hair was all over the place because I used to have really long hair back then, and I can't even remember if I took a shower that morning. I had a PE class first thing in the morning, and I remember I sat at the back of that class trying to seem normal to my classmates, but I was so caught up in my own head and so emotionally torn with how lonely and isolated I felt inside that again I was on the verge of tears. Tears about what? I didn't know. All I knew is just I felt really lonely. So when that PE class ended, I remember I sprinted out of it just ready to get the day over with. But my next class was philosophy, my favourite subject. But as soon as I walked into the classroom and sat down, I remember one of my friends looked me dead in the eyes and just asked, "Are you okay?" So I looked at him, shook my head, and just got straight back up and went straight home. The scariest feeling of all isn't the wrath of anger or the pain of heartbreak, it's the feeling of feeling nothing at all, being completely emotionally numb. If you resonate with this feeling, I bet you've become a master at responding to the question of "how are you?" with "fine, you?" giving people the false impression that nothing's wrong with you. I see men in this emotionally numb position every single day of my life, on the internet and in my day-to-day life of being offline. Outside of YouTube, I do one-to-one coaching sessions with men where I just listen to them and I give them advice only if they need it. And more often than not, I can see the pain and numbness in their eyes. The pain of needing a hug, feeling connection, feeling a sense of purpose and feeling a sense of meaning, and as if they're valuable in the world and that they feel strong inside themselves. I heard a stat recently from Dr. K, the healthy gamer, that around 50% of men who commit suicide have shown no previous history of mental illness, and I think that's showing something. So if you're a man feeling this way right now, or if you know a man feeling this way, this video will give you some actionable things to use. Now I'm 24, it's easy to look back on all of the things I either was or wasn't doing at the age of 17, which was fueling the feeling of depression and isolation. I remember I would binge watch YouTube frequently, I was eating junk food, I would pee and moan, and I would frequently listen to sad music, which all further fanned the flames of my bad mental health. Regardless, here's what I would now tell 17-year-old Lewis if I had the chance. Hello, mate. Hi. You okay? Yeah? Come on, man. Are you okay? No. What's going on? I just feel really down. I can't be bothered to go to school. I feel like I've isolated myself from all of my friends, and I just feel really sad. Sad? Yeah. Everything just feels gloomy, and I want to speak to people about it, but I don't want to feel like I'm a burden. Well, luckily for you, I sparked up a conversation, didn't I? Look, let me ask you a question, which might seem a bit random, okay? Okay. When I say the words mental health, what do you think? Like people who have problems? Psychos, for example? Okay. Well, whether we're a psycho or not, did you know that we all have to manage our mental health in some way? How? Well, you know how you take care of your physical health by exercising? Yeah. We can also do the same for our mental health, but by building good habits. Like what? Good sleep, talking to people, exercising, smiling. It's like a table, right? Let's call it the mental health table. Now, if one leg is broken, the table might wobble. But if all of the legs are broken, the table will collapse. So at the moment, I've got a wobbly table. Yeah, something like that. And you've never been too good at carpentry, so perhaps you need a hand. Do you need a hand? Yes, please. Cool. Good lad. Imagine taking the best football players in the world and putting them on a pitch with no defence players. Although defenders aren't as exciting as strikers, we all underestimate their ability to actually help a team win. And when it comes to managing our mental health, our defenders are the basics. As kids, we would roll our eyes when our parents would tell us to go outside more or eat our greens. We know what would help us, but we don't do it. Because when we are feeling low, our defence players are the first things to go. We stop exercising, we start scrolling more, we withdraw ourselves from friends and we start eating junk food. Because we think, what difference does it make? It turns out a huge difference. Because letting the basics of your mental health slide is just like taking your defenders out of your football team and just leaving an open goal. But we don't have to get the basics perfect like some people on the internet say. And there's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all approach to aligning all of them. But the important thing to note is when we get the basics right and good enough, they allow us to have cash in our health bank and remain upright and steadfast when life tests us. Because it will. If you're rolling your eyes already because you think what I'm about to tell you you've already heard before, then I would say it's even more important that you listen to it again, because the science is crystal clear on what leads to good mental health and psychological flourishing.
Hello, son. Bloody hell, this is all a bit technical, isn't it? Right, the best analogy I've ever come across for mental health is a table. Now, it is built up of many legs. So you've got purpose, usefulness, I added that one in, routine, exercise, sleep, human connection, and nutrition. Everything that is included in these slides, by the way, is a combination of all of the books, psychological, and all of the research that I've been doing and the podcasts I've listened to about neuroscience and psychology, all about mental health. So if you're curious, I've added some references as well. Now, the important thing to note with the mental health table is in order for it to stand, it doesn't need all of the legs, but if enough legs are chopped off, then obviously it's going to wobble and fall down. So pay attention to that as we're going through all of this. Now, I had a realization when I was about 18 to 19 as I started to get my mental health back on track, and I just thought, no wonder why I was depressed when I was 17, because I was doing all of these things on this meme. And I posted this on the YouTube community the other day, and some people found it quite funny. I wasn't smoking weed, don't get me wrong. I wasn't drinking a lot of alcohol, but all of the other stuff, I wasn't doing Prozac, but all of the other stuff, I had a terrible sleep schedule. I was eating junk food. I was watching that devil thing in the top right left. I wasn't socializing too much, and I was playing video games all of the time. And my realization I had when I was about 18, 19 was no wonder why I was depressed. So that is the first piece of brotherly accountability I would give you, my friend. If you're doing all of these things, then you do deserve to be in a mental crap hole. So just do the opposite, invert. We're going to get into this more as we go through the slides. Now, first point we're going to cover is exercise. If action tires the body but puts your soul at ease, Sun Tzu said, do it. The two most important neurochemical components that exercise produces is dopamine, which is this thing in the left, and endorphins as well. So, whether it's treating mild or severe depression, exercise has been better than antidepressants. That is telling. I remember when I was a salesman in a leisure centre, a lot of people would come in and think, oh, I have to lift weights or I have to do this type of exercise because it's just what everyone does. If you don't want to do jiu-jitsu, don't do jiu-jitsu. If you don't want to lift heavy rocks, if you don't want to do a certain form of exercise but you want to do another, just do that. Do whatever comes naturally to you. In order to have peace of mind, you have to have peace of body first. It is crucial that exercise is taken seriously. It leads to higher circulating levels of dopamine, and the more dopamine receptors there are in your brain, increases your ability to find joy in everyday life, essentially. I work out outside every single day. I live in England, so it's not too sunny. You can see the Harry Potter style houses and the washing on the line. Exercising outside, if you have the luxury to do so, do it. Also, if you train hard, your aesthetics will come as a consequence of that. I've never really trained for aesthetics, but my aesthetics, I would get naked and show you, but it's not PG. My aesthetics have always come as a consequence of me just putting effort in. I train for the mental capabilities that it gives me, not for the physical. That's just a bonus. I heard a prediction the other day that apparently male body dysmorphia is going to overtake female body dysmorphia by like 2030, and I get it, because everyone's popping pills and doing roids nowadays. Just put the effort in of training hard and the aesthetics will come. Forget about the aesthetics. Exercise protocol. We're going to be covering a lot of protocols throughout this as well. Minimum 3 workouts of resistance training per week and 1 cardio session of no less than 30 minutes. Cron Gracie. Love that man. Bonus protocol. A lot of these things you can combine as well. So we're going to get into the human connection side in a minute, but if you can join a club linked to exercising and socializing, you tick 2 things off the box. You have now strengthened 2 legs on your mental health table, which is exercising and human connection. For me, I joined a jiu-jitsu gym about 2 years ago. I was boxing throughout my teenage years, and just having something structured in your routine where you know you're going to get your socializing from it just does wonders. Right. Nutrition. Now, I'm not a qualified nutritionist, so you're going to have to take all of this with a pinch of sugar, let's say. Everything I'm about to explain to you is from this book, Deep Nutrition. So I'm relaying the information. Take it however you want it. I just thought I would include it in anyway. Sugar. When I cut out sugar when I was 18 years old, hands down changed my life. I was no longer a groggy teenager or an adult. Look at that man. I bet he's having a load of fun. Now, Dr. Rhonda Patrick, she's been on Joe Rogan quite a few times. She outlines the science behind what sugar actually does. So when you eat refined carbohydrates, your body releases endotoxins which cause inflammation. Now, inflammation, usually we know it is quite a bad thing. This promotes the feelings of social withdrawal and depression. I don't want to talk to anyone after I binge eat sugar. Absolutely not. Because it decreases dopamine levels in the brain. So why do you think you're going to have adequate dopamine stores in a conversation to be pleasant and lively and bubbly and generating ideas when you're talking to someone? You're not going to have that. The inflammation inhibits serotonin, which is the happiness hormone of appreciating things in the here and now. When inflammation occurs, your body doesn't prioritize happiness. It just wants to deal with the inflammation. Lastly, it thinks you're sick and wants to kill the infection to survive. So if you're constantly eating sugary food, you're constantly inflamed and stressed, further decreasing your happy hormone levels, which is serotonin. Finally, because I just said lastly, serotonin, don't know how to say that, then gets converted into quenalitic acid, which crosses over the blood-brain barrier and becomes a neurotoxin, which causes depression. So red flags all round. Exercise, however, specifically aerobic exercise, she highlighted in her podcast with Joe Rogan, causes the muscles to soak up this quinine, preventing it from forming quenalitic acid, essentially. Lastly, seed oils. Now, I know this is really, really controversial, but this book, Deep Nutrition, the main 2 things she says just to not eat, and after outlining all of the science, is seed oils and sugar. So seed oils, vegetable oils, you got a list of them here: canola oil, peanut, corn, sunflower, all of that stuff. Vegetable oils are also inflammatory as they unbalance your omega-3 and omega-6 levels by producing linoleic acid in your body. So what should you eat? Number 1, tryptophan-rich foods. So they produce serotonin. So, for example, leafy greens, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, mushrooms, broccolis, peas, other things to eat. Saffron. There's a lot of clinical studies which show that saffron is actually really good at treating depression. It's just quite expensive. Dark chocolate, good for your brain. A lot of water. Don't eat it, drink it. Multivitamin per day. Fish oil for your brain. Vitamin D. Guys, you know what to eat. When I was young, I knew what to eat, which was just vegetables and high protein and all of that stuff, and not eating junk food. You already know, just take your mental health seriously. This is what I eat. If you're interested, you can see a few graphic images. I fast until 12 p.m. and I have 4 eggs, 2 slices of wholemeal bread. You can see everything there. You can pause and just have a little look. I'm not going to explain that too much. I would recommend supplements to take. Heights, absolutely. Maca powder, good for testosterone, and spirulina. I take it. And then also healthy for your gut, which is fermented vegetables. Right. Ask yourself, what is one small change you could make to your nutritional intake today? You don't have to change absolutely everything, but just start small. Sleep. All of this stuff is going to come from Matthew Walker. Take anyone in the world, deprive them of sleep, and they'll instantly become vulnerable to physical and mental illness. I'll tell you one thing. My sleep pattern when I was 17 was absolutely diabolical until I heard Jordan Peterson say your emotional regulation systems are directly in tune with your circadian rhythm. Otherwise, known as go to bed and wake up at the exact same time every single day. Let's not aim for perfection, but for more often than not, we have a good sleep hygiene, because the more you start to try and track your sleep with all of those trackers, it just adds more anxiety to where you're thinking, oh, I only got 6 hours sleep, I'm not absolutely optimized. Just aim for better. Just aim for more often than not you got good sleep, okay? Here are some monk level sleep protocols if that wasn't enough for you. Keep vigorous exercise to early in the day and use your evenings for relaxation. A warm bath or sauna, if you have the opportunity to do so, can help you reach the optimal sleep temperature. As soon as you wake up, so doing this in the morning, get natural sunlight into your eyes as quickly as possible. Stand outside for 10 minutes, go for a walk. That's what I do every single morning because this will kickstart your circadian rhythm. And the earlier in the day that you get sunlight, the earlier you'll start to feel sleepy. That's from Andrew Huberman. Solve all your cognitive problems during the day. Don't leave executive CEO thinking to the evening. I did that the other night. Couldn't sleep at all. Allow yourself 45 minutes of unstructured thinking before bed. By going on a walk and talking to yourself out loud, you'll look like an absolute madman in the streets, but I do it every night and I don't care. That's why I loved COVID times, because I could wear a mask and no one could tell that I was speaking to myself. I wear a snood now. Anyway, can't anymore because it's now sunny. Journal with these prompts in the evening. What are you really worried about? What am I presently sad about? What has annoyed me and how? What does my body want? What is still lovely? You might be thinking, what does my body want? That's a bit, sus. These are really important to reflect on because we don't reflect on them hardly ever, especially the first one. What am I really worried about? Allow yourself to unravel the thoughts in your mind from an objective lens. Like, really think, what does my body want? Maybe you want to move more, or maybe you want physical connection. You've got to start paying attention to the signs. Use the 3-2-1 rule. Stop eating 3 hours before bed. Stop drinking 2 hours before bed. And stop using all technology 1 hour before bed. Go to bed, wake up at the same time every single day. Keep a notepad by the side of your bed to catch ruminating thoughts. And if you're obsessively ruminating and can't sleep, don't sit there in your bed and try and sleep. Get up and do something else. Don't go on your phone or anything like that, but go for a walk. Or was going to say do some press-ups. Don't do some press-ups. Go for a walk and breathe in some fresh air or read a book. Don't lay there in your bed and try to sleep if you can't sleep. And no caffeine or energy drinks after 2 p.m. because it blocks your adenosine receptors, which contribute to you feeling sleepy. Routine. There's a book here, my favourite book ever, Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday, and there's a chapter all about routine in here. And when I recommended this book to my cousin Brandon, he skipped that chapter. He was like, yeah, I don't need it. So if you're like Brandon and you think you don't need routine, hear me out. Routine is the most underestimated thing on this list of the mental health table because structure helps us feel safe and secure in an uncertain world, even though sometimes, we want to break that structure and we want to have some adventurous fun. If you're a fan of this channel, you're likely someone who's quite disciplined, but you also want to be playful as well. I made a whole video about how to balance discipline and playfulness, and the main thing I said, TLDR, is schedule your time for discipline, but don't schedule your time for playfulness. Be disciplined before you're playful. You have to have discipline now in order to have freedom later. And a routine will allow you to schedule that discipline in. Because when we feel low, it's really tempting to break our routine and any form of structure. We stay up late on our phones, we watch TV because we're blocking stressful emotions, and then it all makes it harder to wake up the next day. We feel more groggy, and then we want to scroll more because we don't want to feel groggy, and it's just a never-ending cycle until we break it. In order to create your routine, what I would say is sit and visualize your ideal day. Go through some of your values, go through how you've spent your time in the past that you really liked, and really craft a day that you would love to live every single day. 2 more. Human connection. So social support has positive effects for the recipient and the person giving it as well. So it's a two-way process. Spending time alone is very much needed, and it's important to be comfortable in your own company, but taken to its extreme, it's so easy to isolate yourself from people who care about you and then fall into a pit of self-loathing and rumination, which makes it harder to reach out and ask for help and support from people. Frequently being around others, in line with your social requirements, if you're an introvert or extrovert, you have to take that into account because it is different for everyone. To just observe, interact, and just be with them is associated with better outcomes in mood. Because when you're around someone, if you are feeling low and you're feeling lonely, you're going to feel like a burden when you speak to people, and the thought of opening up and being vulnerable in front of someone probably scares you. Let me tell you something. When you're around other people, you don't always have to talk about your emotions and your moods if you don't want to. The idea of reach out and ask for help, sometimes it misses the mark by thinking people just want to suddenly explode with all of their emotional outpourings on other people. But I never want to do that when I'm feeling low. I just want to be around people, have a hug, and chat about stuff. So push against the urge to isolate yourself when you're feeling low and reach out to others. Also, if you don't have a network to rely on, you might want to seek professional help in order to learn how to build your personal network. So think about that. Lastly, purpose and usefulness. I added this in because I believe we have an inherent need to feel competent and purpose in our lives, and every man I've seen who feels low and is in a bad space mentally doesn't have a sense of purpose. So this is how purpose changes the brain, and I learned this recently from a book called The Art of Impossible by Stephen Kotler, I believe his name is. It decreases reactivity in the amygdala, which is important because the amygdala is a part of the brain. It's Latin for almond. It's a really small part. It's what processes fear and anxiety. It decreases the volume of the medial temporal cortex, increases the volume of the right insular cortex, and a less reactive amygdala means less stress, more resilience. The medial temporal cortex is involved in perception, suggesting that when we feel a sense of purpose, it alters how we perceive incoming information. Larger right insular cortex, it protects against depression and increases well-being. And purpose gives us an external focus, a mission that we're looking to build, which is giving us focus away from ourselves, which is really important when it comes to depression because it guards against obsessive self-rumination, which fuels this ruminating loop of anxiety and low feeling. To discover your purpose, this is what I would suggest. Get a piece of paper, turn yourself into a statue. No. First, write down on a piece of paper all of your current interests. So things you would like to spend a Sunday afternoon reading about or watching a lecture on. Those are your passions. Then, write down all of the current problems you see in the world that you would like to see solved. Then, engage your thinking, your incubation, let's call it, to find patterns between the two lists. For example, let's say your current passion, one of them is language learning, and one problem you'd like to see solved in the world is social anxiety in young teenagers. Your purpose could then be becoming a master communicator to teach the younger generation social skills. Finally, do you have any hobbies that you're currently progressing in? What are you getting better at? Do you have any skills that you're currently developing to aid your purpose or to help other people? Because feeling a sense of progress that we're getting better at something will instantly improve your mental health, no matter what it is. Hopefully not killing people or something like that. To go back to this godly analogy, guard this table with your life because it will sustain you throughout everything that happens in your life. Remember, if one leg goes on the table might still stand, but it will be wobbly. If all of them go, you're done for, and you'll have to rebuild it completely. Let's get healthy.